You've noticed it, haven't you? Some of the most intelligent people you know are quietly drowning financially. They read more, they think deeper, they see patterns others miss, and yet, money slips through their fingers like water, not because they're lazy, not because they're incapable, but because somewhere deep inside their psyche, money became symbolic of something dangerous, something dirty, something that threatens who they believe they are. This is not a financial problem. This is a psychological one, and until it's made conscious, intelligence will continue to work against them. Intelligence is often spoken about as if it were a clean blessing, a straight-line advantage, a gift that automatically leads to better outcomes. But intelligence is not neutral. It does not simply add clarity to life. It amplifies whatever already exists beneath the surface. When intelligence develops faster than self-awareness, it becomes a force that turns inward, sharpens doubt, and complicates instinct. The intelligent mind does not merely think, it circles, revisits, dissects, reframes, and questions its own conclusions until certainty dissolves. What feels like depth is often uncontained cognition. What looks like wisdom from the outside is, internally, constant friction. For the highly intelligent person, money is rarely just money. It is not numbers on a screen, not a tool to be used and put away. It becomes symbolic, saturated with meaning, history, morality, and consequence. Where others see income, the intelligent mind sees power dynamics. Where others see profit, it sees social impact. Where others see opportunity, it sees the cost to identity. Every financial decision becomes layered with invisible questions. What does this say about me? Who do I become if I succeed this way? What am I aligning myself with? Intelligence stretches a simple transaction into an existential dilemma. This is why action becomes difficult. Not because intelligence lacks capability, but because it perceives too much at once. When the mind sees 10 possible futures instead of one, movement feels reckless. When it anticipates downstream effects, hesitation masquerades as responsibility. When it notices contradictions, it delays commitment. Less reflective people move not because they are wiser, but because their perception is narrower. They do not need to reconcile meaning before acting. The intelligent mind, however, wants coherence before motion, and money rarely feels coherent. Intelligence also magnifies the unconscious. Whatever beliefs, fears, and emotional residues exist below awareness are given sharper articulation by a powerful mind. An unconscious fear of loss becomes elaborate financial pessimism. An unconscious fear of judgment becomes ethical rigidity. An unconscious fear of power becomes self-imposed limitation. The mind provides elegant explanations for what the psyche has already decided. This is why intelligence without integration so often works against its owner. It does not free them, it justifies their paralysis. At some point, intelligence becomes a defense. Overthinking replaces risk. Analysis replaces exposure. Understanding replaces doing. The mind stays busy so the self never has to feel vulnerable. Money, which requires engagement with uncertainty, becomes a threat to this fragile equilibrium. It forces action where the intelligent psyche prefers contemplation. It demands embodiment where the mind prefers abstraction. And so intelligence, unbalanced by grounded awareness, quietly sabotages financial life while convincing itself it is being careful, ethical, or above it all. Every psyche contains a shadow, not something evil, but something unfinished. The shadow is made of unlived impulses, rejected desires, disowned traits, and qualities deemed unacceptable early in life. For many intelligent people, money lives almost entirely in this shadow territory. It is not examined openly, it is pushed away, rationalized against, or morally reframed. Not because money itself is dangerous, but because of what it became associated with long before adulthood. Early experiences matter more than logic. Long before a person understands economics, they absorb emotional patterns. Perhaps money in the household meant tension, silence, or conflict. Perhaps it created distance between caregivers. Perhaps it arrived unpredictably and vanished suddenly. Or perhaps those with money appeared emotionally unavailable, domineering, or dismissive. The child does not analyze these patterns. The child absorbs them somatically. Money becomes linked to danger, instability, or loss of love. As intelligence develops, it does not erase these associations. It intellectualizes them. It builds moral narratives around them. Power becomes corruption. Wealth becomes exploitation. Success becomes moral compromise. Control becomes cruelty. These are not inherently false ideas, but when they remain unconscious, they become rigid identities rather than nuanced truths. The intelligent person does not merely dislike money. They position themselves against it as a form of self-definition. Somewhere early on, the psyche makes a silent vow. It is not spoken in words but encoded in emotion. If money turns people into that, cold, absent, unsafe, then I will not become it. This decision is not rational, it is protective. It is the nervous system choosing belonging and safety over resources, and once made, it does not dissolve simply because the person grows smarter. The unconscious does not respond to arguments. It responds to perceived threat. This is why the struggle feels irrational from the outside. The person understands budgeting. They understand opportunity. They understand value creation. And yet something invisible resists. Opportunities feel uncomfortable. Earning beyond a certain level triggers guilt or anxiety. Success brings unease instead of relief. The unconscious is enforcing the vow. It is protecting the self-image that equates goodness with lack, depth with struggle, morality with modesty. The shadow relationship with money also produces projection. The intelligent person may criticize those who pursue wealth, labeling them shallow, unconscious, greedy, or compromised. This criticism is not about them, it is about the dissound desire within. What is rejected externally is usually unintegrated internally. The psyche pushes money into the shadow, then attacks it there, all while remaining mysteriously deprived of it. And the unconscious always keeps its promises, not because it is cruel, but because it is consistent. If money has been categorized as dangerous to identity, the psyche will ensure distance from it. Missed chances will feel justified. Undercharging will feel ethical. Financial instability will feel familiar. The mind will produce endless reasons, but the root is older, quieter and emotional. Until this shadow is made conscious, intelligence will continue to serve it. The mind will refine the story. It will polish the explanation. It will make deprivation sound like principle. But nothing changes until the underlying association is faced, the belief that money threatens belonging, integrity, or love. Only then can intelligence stop defending the wound and start integrating the power it has long feared. Intelligence is often treated as if it were a clean advantage, as if thinking deeply automatically leads to better decisions and smoother outcomes. But intelligence is not neutral. It does not simply add clarity to life. It intensifies whatever already exists inside a person. When intelligence develops faster than emotional awareness, it becomes sharp without being grounded. It turns inward. It questions itself relentlessly. It pulls apart instinct and replaces it with doubt. A highly intelligent person doesn't just think about a situation once and move on. They replay it. They examine it from multiple angles. They imagine consequences that haven't happened yet. They anticipate regret before action even begins. This is where money quietly becomes complicated. For many people, money is a tool. You earn it, you spend it, you save it, you move on. But for a highly intelligent mind, money is never just money. It becomes loaded with meaning. It becomes symbolic. It starts to represent freedom, power, morality, danger, identity, worth, and survival all at once. A simple financial decision becomes a psychological event. Where someone else sees numbers, the intelligent person sees implications. Where others see opportunity, they sense trade-offs. Where others see growth, they see the risk of becoming someone they don't recognize. Intelligence expands perception, but it also expands fear. Seeing more means feeling more exposed. When you understand systems, you also understand how fragile they are. When you understand psychology, you understand how easily people change under pressure. When you understand power, you understand how it can distort values. So the intelligent mind hesitates. Not because it lacks courage, but because it sees too many doors opening at once and doesn't trust itself to walk through the right one. Overthinking becomes a form of self-protection. Analysis replaces movement. Reflection replaces risk. The person tells themselves they are being careful, responsible, ethical. But beneath that is often a deeper anxiety. Once I act, I can't undo it. Once I earn, I must confront what earning means. Once I succeed, I must live with the consequences of visibility, expectation, and responsibility. Intelligence anticipates all of this before the first step is even taken. What makes this particularly difficult is that intelligence magnifies the unconscious. Any unresolved belief hiding beneath awareness gets amplified and articulated by a sharp mind. If there is an unconscious fear of being judged, intelligence will frame it as principled minimalism. If there is an unconscious fear of failure, intelligence will dress it up as strategic patience. If there is an unconscious fear of power, intelligence will call it moral restraint. The mind becomes a brilliant lawyer defending decisions the psyche has already made. This is how intelligence, without integration, begins to work against the person. It does not liberate them. It rationalizes their avoidance. It does not clarify desire. It complicates it until desire feels unsafe. Money requires engagement with uncertainty, exposure to judgment, and a willingness to act before everything is resolved. An overactive mind resists all three. So the intelligent person may understand money perfectly and still remain blocked from it emotionally. Every human psyche has a shadow, not something dark or evil, but something unfinished. The shadow is made of traits, desires, and capacities that were discouraged, rejected, or felt unsafe to express early in life. For many intelligent people, money ends up buried in this shadow. not because money is inherently wrong, but because of what it became associated with during formative years. Long before conscious beliefs formed, emotional impressions were being recorded. A child doesn't need explanations. They read atmosphere, they notice tension, they feel absence. If money in the household brought arguments, silence, or unpredictability, the child's nervous system learned that money equals instability. If caregivers became cold, stressed, or unavailable when finances were involved, money became linked to emotional loss. If people with money appeared controlling, arrogant, or dismissive, money became associated with threat. These impressions don't disappear with intelligence. They become embedded. As the child grows into an intelligent adult, these early associations don't vanish. They evolve. They turn into values, philosophies, and moral frameworks. Power becomes suspicious. Wealth becomes morally complicated. Control becomes dangerous. Earning becomes tied to guilt. The person may not consciously think this way, but their emotional responses reveal it. Discomfort arises when opportunities appear. Anxiety follows success. Relief comes from staying just below a certain threshold. At some point, often very early, the psyche makes a silent decision. It doesn't sound dramatic. It isn't spoken aloud, but it is absolute. If money turns people into that, then I will not become it. This decision is not logical, it is protective. It is the nervous system choosing safety over resources. It is the psyche prioritizing belonging, integrity, or emotional survival over material gain. And once made, this decision doesn't respond to rational arguments later in life. This is why intelligent people can feel as if they are fighting themselves. They want stability, freedom, and ease, yet something inside resists growth. They may sabotage opportunities, undercharge for their work, delay decisions, or settle for less than they're capable of earning. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the inside, it feels necessary. The unconscious is keeping its promise. It is protecting the identity that equates goodness with lack and depth with struggle. There is often projection involved as well. The intelligent person may judge those who pursue wealth aggressively. They may see them as shallow, unconscious, greedy, or compromised. This judgment provides moral distance. But what is rejected externally is usually disowned internally. The desire for autonomy, influence, and security has been pushed into the shadow along with money itself. Attacking it feels safer than integrating it. The tragedy is that intelligence makes this dynamic harder to see, not easier. The mind is capable of producing endlessly convincing explanations. It can justify almost any outcome. It can make deprivation sound noble and hesitation sound wise. But beneath the narratives is a simple emotional truth: money feels unsafe to the nervous system. It feels like it threatens identity, connection, or self-respect. Until that association is made conscious, nothing changes. The unconscious doesn't respond to insight alone, it responds to safety. It needs to learn that money does not automatically mean becoming cruel, absent, or corrupt. It needs evidence that power can coexist with integrity, that earning can coexist with depth, and that stability does not require the loss of self. When this begins to integrate, intelligence stops being a defense and starts becoming an ally. The mind no longer needs to protect the psyche from imagined danger. Thought and action begin to align. Money loses its symbolic weight and becomes functional again. And only then does the intelligent person stop fighting an invisible battle they never realized they were in. There is an uncomfortable pattern that shows up again and again among highly intelligent people, and it often hides behind language that sounds noble. On the surface, it looks like detachment. It sounds like values. It presents itself as depth. But underneath, there is often a quiet belief that having less somehow makes one more ethical, more awake, more human, more evolved. This belief is rarely spoken honestly, because if it were stated plainly it would sound extreme, so instead it disguises itself in softer phrases. I'm not materialistic. Money isn't that important to me. I care about deeper things. These statements are not lies, but they are not complete truths either. What's really happening is identity construction. Intelligence doesn't just analyze the world, it builds self-concepts. And for many intelligent people, especially those who grew up feeling different, sensitive, or misunderstood, morality becomes the safest identity available. If they couldn't dominate socially, they could be superior ethically. If they couldn't win materially, they could win internally. Over time, this becomes an unconscious equation: less money equals more integrity. Struggle equals authenticity. Wanting more equals corruption. This is not humility. Humility does not require self-denial. This is moral inflation, where the ego expands not through power, but through renunciation. The danger of moral inflation is that it feels righteous. It doesn't feel like self-sabotage. It feels like principle. The intelligent person isn't telling themselves they are afraid of money. They are telling themselves they are above it. And this makes the belief almost impossible to challenge. because to question it would feel like betraying one's values. If having less is what makes me good, then having more threatens who I am. So the psyche protects the identity by keeping money at a distance. Opportunities feel wrong. Desire feels suspicious. Success feels like selling out. Over time, this creates a split. The person may talk about fairness, justice, and consciousness, but privately feel resentment toward those who succeed. Or they may admire wealth from afar while insisting it doesn't matter. This tension drains energy. It turns money into a moral battlefield instead of a neutral tool. And because the belief operates unconsciously, the intelligent person often doesn't realize that their ethics have become a defense against vulnerability. It's safer to believe you don't want something than to risk failing to obtain it. It's safer to frame lack as virtue than to confront unmet desire. Eventually, moral inflation collapses under its own weight. The person feels stuck, frustrated, or secretly ashamed. They may feel unseen, underpaid, or undervalued, yet unable to ask for more without guilt. This is the quiet cost of believing that goodness requires deprivation. The psyche can only sustain this contradiction for so long before it demands integration. Beneath this moral structure lies something even deeper: fear of power. Money is not just currency, it is agency. It expands choice, influence, and impact. And power has consequences. Intelligent people sense this intuitively. They know that money does not change who you are, it reveals you. It amplifies existing traits. If someone is kind, they can become more generous. If someone is insecure, they can become more controlling. If someone is resentful, they can become more destructive. This awareness makes power feel dangerous. If an intelligent person has not confronted their own shadow, the anger they suppress, the envy they deny, the hunger for recognition they pretend not to have, then power feels like a threat. What if I misuse it? What if I become arrogant? What if I hurt people without realizing it? What if I lose my moral compass? These fears are rarely conscious, but they shape behavior. Staying poor becomes a form of containment, not safe financially, but safe psychologically. Without power, the shadow remains dormant. Without resources, the risk of corruption feels lower. So the psyche chooses limitation as a form of self-control. It feels responsible, it feels mature. But it is also avoidance. True responsibility is not avoiding power, it is learning how to hold it. But that requires confronting uncomfortable parts of the self. It requires admitting the desire to influence, to matter, to have impact. It requires facing the fear that one might enjoy power too much. For many intelligent people, it feels easier to reject money than to integrate the shadow it would activate. This fear creates a subtle ceiling. The person may work hard, but not too hard. They may succeed, but only up to a point. Beyond that point, anxiety increases. They procrastinate, they underprice themselves, they pull back. From the outside, it looks like bad strategy. From the inside, it feels like self-preservation. The psyche is keeping them from crossing into territory that feels psychologically unsafe. On top of all this comes complexity paralysis. Intelligent people don't see isolated actions, they see systems. They see how supply chains exploit labor. They see how markets reinforce inequality. They see how advertising manipulates insecurity. They see how profit can conflict with ethics. This awareness is not wrong, but when it is uncontained, it becomes paralyzing. Every decision feels morally loaded. Buying something becomes a referendum on values. Earning money becomes a question of complicity. Saving becomes a symbol of privilege. Nothing stays simple. A job offer isn't just income, it's alignment. A business idea isn't just creativity, it's impact. Even charging for work can feel like a violation. The intelligent mind wants certainty before action. It wants to know that nothing is being harmed, no line is being crossed, no integrity is being compromised. But life does not offer that kind of clarity. Systems are messy. Participation is never pure, so action freezes, not because the person doesn't care, but because they care too much without boundaries. Meanwhile, less reflective people move. They earn, spend, save, and adjust as they go. Not because they are more ethical, but because they are less burdened by meaning. They don't carry the weight of the entire system on each decision. They accept imperfection as part of participation. For the intelligent person, this comparison can deepen shame. They see others advancing and conclude that something is wrong with them. They don't realize that their paralysis is not a personal flaw, but a cognitive overload. Their mind is trying to solve moral complexity before allowing movement. But movement is often what reveals clarity. Meaning is not always found before action, it is often refined through it. Until the intelligent person learns to tolerate imperfection, money will remain frozen. Until they accept that no financial choice is completely clean, they will remain stuck. The task is not to abandon ethics, but to ground them. To stop asking money to carry the weight of identity, morality, and self-worth. To allow action without requiring existential certainty. Only then does intelligence become functional again. Not a cage, not a weapon turned inward, but a guide that moves alongside action instead of replacing it. Many intelligent people learn very early how to stay safe inside their minds. When the world feels unpredictable, when emotions feel overwhelming, when failure feels humiliating, the mind becomes a refuge. Understanding replaces doing, thinking replaces risking, reading replaces earning. It looks productive from the outside, and it even feels productive on the inside. Books are consumed, videos are watched, theories are mastered. The person knows more about money than most people who actually have it. They can explain markets, psychology, cycles, leverage and strategy with precision, and yet nothing changes materially. This is because understanding has quietly become a defense. The mind stays active so the self never has to step into uncertainty. Analyzing feels safer than participating because analysis cannot be rejected. The market cannot humiliate you if you never enter it. Failure cannot expose you if you remain a student forever. Intellectualization becomes a way to maintain dignity without vulnerability. The intelligent person tells themselves they are preparing, refining, waiting for the right moment. But beneath that is fear. Fear of being seen trying, fear of being wrong publicly, fear of discovering that insight does not automatically translate into results. The ego prefers mastery without exposure. It prefers knowing over risking, because risking involves the possibility of collapse, and collapse threatens the carefully constructed self-image of being competent, thoughtful, and capable. So the mind stays busy. It fills time with research, frameworks, and explanations. It creates a sense of progress without movement. This is why it feels productive, but it is productivity without consequence. Nothing is on the line, and without something on the line, nothing grows. Eventually this avoidance becomes exhausting. The person feels stuck, frustrated, even ashamed. They know they are capable of more, but something invisible holds them back, and that something is not lack of intelligence. It is fear of humiliation, fear of discovering that knowledge alone is not protection, fear of stepping into the messy, imperfect reality where learning happens through loss as much as through gain. Underneath the intellectual defense lies something older. Money struggles are rarely born in adulthood. They are childhood memories wearing adult clothes. Long before financial literacy, there was emotional literacy. Long before strategy, there was atmosphere. A child does not understand budgets, but they understand tension. They don't know income, but they feel instability. If money caused fights, the body learned that money brings danger. If money disappeared suddenly, the body learned that security is fragile. If money came with strings attached, the body learned that support is conditional. If money created emotional distance, the body learned that resources cost connection. These lessons are not stored as thoughts, they are stored as sensations. Tightness in the chest, restlessness in the stomach, a subtle unease when money enters the picture. The nervous system doesn't forget these patterns just because the mind becomes intelligent. Intelligence can explain them, but it cannot override them. The body's job is survival, not logic. And when survival and strategy conflict, survival always wins. This is why someone can intellectually understand money and still feel unsafe earning it, holding it, or keeping it. The nervous system associates money with threat, and threat triggers protective responses, avoidance, hesitation, self-sabotage. No amount of affirmations or financial advice works if the body believes money equals instability. The body will veto the mind every time. Somewhere in childhood, often quietly, the intelligent child made a vow. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve words. It was a felt decision. I will never be like them. Them might have been parents, authority figures, or people with power who seemed cruel, absent, or emotionally unsafe. But the image was vague, so the vow became broad, absolute, unconscious. It wasn't about money specifically. It was about identity, about safety, about not becoming someone unrecognizable. As the child grows, the vow remains active. Opportunities feel wrong. Success feels suspicious. Gain feels like betrayal. Not betrayal of society, but betrayal of the self-image that formed around being different, being good, being conscious. The person doesn't realize they are honoring an old promise. They just feel discomfort when things start to work. They pull back without knowing why. They minimize their achievements. They sabotage momentum. Talent alone cannot overcome this. Talent is potential. Integration is capacity. You can be brilliant and fragmented, insightful and divided, visionary and terrified. Without integration, talent leaks. It never consolidates into stability. The shadow, the rejected desires, the denied hunger for impact, the unacknowledged wish for power, stays split off, and whatever remains split will block flow. Money cannot move through a psyche that is at war with itself. Healing begins when money stops being symbolic and becomes psychological material. When it is no longer treated as virtue or corruption, but as energy carrying memory. Money holds stories. Stories about safety, worth, power, and choice. Rejecting money does not erase those stories. It just keeps them unconscious. Integration means allowing money to surface those associations without letting them control behavior. This requires a reorientation. Money is not identity. It is not morality. It is not proof of worth or proof of corruption. It is capacity. It is autonomy. It is choice made visible. It is responsibility embodied. When these qualities are consciously accepted, money loses its threat. It stops feeling like a force that will change who you are and becomes a tool that expresses who you already are. An integrated mind no longer needs poverty to feel ethical. It no longer needs struggle to feel deep. It no longer fears influence as contamination. Ethics become lived, not proven through deprivation. Depth coexists with success. Awareness no longer flinches at visibility. Money stops threatening identity and starts extending consciousness outward into the world. The tragedy is not that smart people struggle with money. The tragedy is that they believe the struggle defines them. That suffering has been mistaken for meaning. But the psyche evolves only when it releases the belief that pain is proof of virtue. Growth does not require self-erasure. Power does not require corruption. Money will not ruin you. What you haven't faced within yourself might. Intelligence was never meant to keep you small. It was meant to illuminate what you could not see. And the unseen thing blocking your wealth was never money itself. It was the part of you that learned long ago that becoming powerful meant losing your soul, and has been protecting you ever since.